Hello and welcome to 8:30 p.m. football. It is of course a beautiful Saturday morning here in Mumbai as game week 16 kicks off later today and Manchester United take on Bournemouth on Monday evening yet again in what's I think three of the last four game weeks that they have played the last fixture of the game week, which of course gives us plenty of time to draw hypotheticals about how United could somehow enter the top four with an incredible win over Bournemouth at Old Trafford. For now, of course, there's a lot to be discussed in terms of United's injury woes. Will Shesko Dillit and Harry Maguire return to the squad based on what we've seen in training? Will Mbumo, Nusser Mazraoui, and Ahmad be away for AFCON, or will they have one last chance to produce a good game for United before going away? And of course, how United and Bournemouth will line up against each other. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Right, so here's the latest as of Saturday morning on United's injury woes. The three major injuries, of course, that United have been nursing are the two centre halves, Delict and Maguire, while Benjamin Sesko is in recovery. Now, Sesko, who was injured the earliest and who was expected to be out the longest, quite remarkably, seems to have made a near full recovery as of Thursday evening. And he's also featured in a couple of training sessions on Friday, but unfortunately out on Saturday because of a different kind of food poisoning illness, which is quite strange. But he is expected to at least feature on the bench as per his agent, which is, I think, hugely positive for United. We definitely need that towering presence in the box if required in the second half. The start seems unlikely, but I think we will take it based on what we at least were hearing before the Wolves game. On the other hand, the two centre halves absolutely no luck there, as Amorim indicated yesterday in his press conference. Both of them, both of Maguire and De Ligt, will be out.
Maguire is out. De Ligt is out. Ben, we have to see.
The AFCON situation still remains a little uncertain. Amorim again indicated that he is in talks individually with the nations and there will not be a sweeping decision for all three players. But again, hugely positive signs. All three players were seen a couple of hours ago in the Friday evening training sessions. Alright, so this is of course how United and Bournemouth are expected to line up against each other when they go head to head on Monday evening. As far as United goes, I think there were three key issues that at least we saw at the end of the West Ham game. One, of course, was Aiden Heaven's performance, the other being whether Diogo Dalot should start over Dorgu, whether he has the ability of making those runs and delivering into the box. At the last, of course, being Mason Mount, if he needs to start every single game. I think United at least were able to come up with a temporary solution for all three problems in the Wolves game, which I think should be cemented at the end of the Bournemouth, Aston Villa, and Newcastle run if all goes well. As far as Aiden Heaven goes, I would expect him to start against Bournemouth as well. He put up quite a significant performance. So did Diogo Dalot, obviously also delivering that assist to Mbumo, as well as a couple of really good crosses in the box, one of which should have been a goal in the eventual passage of play that followed. So I think both of these players would be quite high on confidence. Mazraoui and Shaw have also been consistently putting up good, decent performances. I think Mazraoui definitely belongs in that right centre half position over the right wing back position, which will obviously again be vacant once Ahmad leaves, but that is a problem for later. As far as the front line goes, I think Cunha playing up front was definitely significantly better for him in the Wolves game as it was prior to that in the Everton and the West Ham games. He did not come up with a goal, but he did have two clear chances, which I think the Cunha of the first three games of the season would have definitely put away. So I think Cunha would be definitely looking to improve that goal scoring record against Bournemouth. And as far as that partnership of Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount goes, I think it was incredible to see against Wolves. This is, of course, the goal that they scored against Wolves.
United, and it's not over yet because Bruno Fernandes still got the ball. It's a Mason Mount!
Now, as the numbers also clearly indicate, United have been much better off when Mount has started. A close to 72% win rate as opposed to a 25% win rate when he doesn't start. That, apart from the fact that he has 3 goals in the last 4 starts that he has made for United, and the sort of positions that he's been taking, especially against Wolves, he dropped back a lot more, which allows someone like Cunha, who also thrives on dribbling, to basically start much higher up the pitch. I think all in all, this Bruno, Mount, and Cunha trio of course, has a long way to go, but there were initial signs of flourishing, which is absolutely critical for United once the entire right three of United leave for AFCON. All right, now let's talk about Bournemouth. I feel like what Anthony Raola has done with Bournemouth after taking over from Eddie Howe has been absolutely incredible. And he's been doing amazing this season as well, especially after losing three of his main back four to other clubs, which is something that we may actually say about Iraola as well, either at the end of this season or the next, when he probably leaves for a top flight European club. But at least as of this season, I feel like Senesi, who was mostly a used sub last season, has been excellent for them. For all of you FPL fanatics, of like obviously he's been a big DefCon merchant, also keeps clean sheets here and there. Petrovic, who is mostly replaced Kepa, who was on loan last year, has also been good for them. Truffet and Diakite obviously replaced Kirkesh and Hewson, who left in the summer, both of whom have also been quite good. Truffet, I think, has been particularly impressive in that link-up play with Semenyo. I think the last 4 or 5 games have been a slight dry spell for Bournemouth, which I think United definitely need to dwell on. But it's a well-rounded side. Like, don't get me wrong, that midfield pivot of Scott and Tavernier has also been firing. Now that Tavernier is back for good, he was obviously injured at the start of the season, which somehow played into their hands. They were able to accrue a lot of those wins. But Kluivert being back along with Tavernier and Semenyo creates that midfield three, which I think would be a big, big threat to United. Um, as far as their attacking chances go, I think most of what they've created in the season when they were actually firing and scoring was through Semenyo. He has incredible pace, incredible physical ability, and will definitely trouble the likes of Mazraoui and Heaven with his runs down the left hand side. Evan Nilsson, of course, again has returned from injury, and honestly, I would still prefer Krupi Jr. for his clinical finishes to Evan Nilsson, who's not been able to fire yet, but all in all, I just feel like this is a side that has a lot to offer and also dwells on keeping the possession to themselves. I think they've had over 50% possession in most of their games, including that game against Manchester City, where Bournemouth had 52% possession and ended up being absolutely smashed 3-1. Now, normally the way Manchester City played against Bournemouth is what you would advocate for this United side, which does much better when they have less of the ball and they actually thrive on the counter, finding those empty spots and letting those wing backs run. But there was something that was majorly changed, something that was switched up by Amorim in that Wolves game that sort of gives me hope that even with the ball, I think Manchester United can do a fairly good job. I think seeing those games, Amorim finally switched off, or rather switched on something entirely different in that game against Wolves, which also gives me hope that if United were to hold on to most of the ball, they can change things around compared to those games against West Ham and of course Everton. So here's Mbumo and Mason Mount's heat maps in the game against Crystal Palace and West Ham United as a reference. Mbumo against West Ham, of course, was on the right. He spent most of his time in the attacking half, as you would expect from Mbumo. But if you see his performance against Wolves, a lot more of his touches were actually in his own half. He actually played a supporting role and not the role of the lethal finisher that we know him to be. If you see, the same trend also applies to Mason Mount against Crystal Palace, where he spent a lot more of his time up front in on that left hand lane. Whereas against Wolves, he obviously fell back and put in a lot of those balls forward to Cunha, who dribbled past and honestly also should have had a couple of goals, which he did not. But this key structural change, wherein two of your attacking three are actually spending a lot more time behind in the build-up play, is something that Ruben Amorim has been working on. And honestly, it seemed to work fairly well against a low pressing side like Wolves, which makes me believe that against a high pressing side like Bournemouth, if we are able to hold off their two key attacking lanes, which are essentially Tavernier and most importantly Semenyo, United will have an incredible time on the counter. I think the main philosophy is that Dalot on the left, obviously, and Ahmad on the right need to have a lot more space to run. The holder play starts from the center. The ball is basically passed out wide, and that gives you enough time for, let's say, Mount to also come in for the kill. All right, so I think the stage is set for what would be an incredible game. United obviously have a lot more forward momentum, having won 5 and drawn 3 of their last 9 games. Just the one singular defeat to 10-man Everton, which, I mean, that one's going to hurt for the entire season, regardless of the other results. But be that as it may, Semenyo for Bournemouth has not been in great touch. I don't think he's produced a contribution in the last 5 or 6 games, while Bournemouth also remain winless in the last 4 or 5 games, and they have not scored a goal in the last couple of games. Having said that, I don't expect United to keep a clean sheet. I think Semenyo, Tavernier, and Evan Nilsson or Krupi Jr., depending on who starts, are lethal enough to at least score once. But my prediction for this game would be probably like a 3-1. to be on the safer side, because I do expect Mount, Cunha, Mbumo, and Bruno Fernandes to deliver on the back of that Wolves result. Now that is it from my side. See you after the game. Hopefully talking about a United win.